Good morning to you. Good morning. It has been such an amazing sunrise today. I got up, the alarm went off, and I went, oh no, I'm not walking today. The rain, just pounding, and I went, all right. I just kind of laid there trying to decide, what do I do? Do I get on the treadmill? Do I do my live outside my front porch? What do I do today? And then the rain stopped. So I got up and it was dark because of the cloud cover. And oh my word, has God been painting today. It has been so beautiful with all of these clouds, watching the different colors and the light changes. And I snapped so many photos. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it. All right, let's get into perspective. Perspective is all about how you interpret the world. What social conditioning you have, what history you have, what values and programs you have, and then there's a situation and you go, oh, I'm going to make sense of it. This is what it means. That's perspective. Do you know nobody has my perspective? Because my life is unique. Here's the problem. There are other people who have a very, very different perspective than me. And sometimes perspective is formed out of data that you have. And if you don't have all the data, then your perspective, although true to you because it is what you see, may not have all of the information for all of the things you need to understand. This happens all the time. So we're going to go back into that idea of being raised by emotionally immature parents. My parents, born in the 1930s, raised by adults who were dealing with a war. They were 6 when the war broke out. Perspective. They hadn't seen bodies blown up like we have. We have video, we have media. They were very innocent. And they walked into a war and everything changed. Their perspective shifted like that. And the danger is, if you don't know what the enemy's doing, if you don't know, you got to trust somebody who does. Somebody who does has the perspective that you need. Do not question. You will die. You will not come home, and you will never see your loved ones. So therefore, the perspective of the authority is what you do. Well, they taught that to my dad, who lived in that, and it worked pretty well. And then he taught it to me. I lived in it, and I believed it. The authority was my mom, my dad, the encyclopedia, the teacher, and church leader. And my world was very small. It was the neighborhood, it was my dad's studio, it was my church family. That was the world. Now I grow up, start having kids in 91, and the world changed. All of a sudden it expanded. And the people who were in authority had views, perspective, because of wisdom. All of a sudden that changed. There's so many. And what? There's so many different perspectives. And what? Everybody isn't like me, and the world isn't truth like my parents said it was. What do I do with this? And then I raise kids. They're like, what are you talking about? There's one authority. I don't need to believe in that. There's a whole bunch of authority. Let me show you how to do this. And all of a sudden our kids became smarter than us. And authority went out the window. Gen Xers, we are the bridge generation between the two. Your perspective is what your parents taught you. It worked really well in that world. Our perspective doesn't work as well anymore. When you kind of grew up with people who didn't actually support anything that you thought because they had the perspective and were trying to keep you safe, they told you, no. You don't understand. Let me explain how this is going to go down. And then there was this whole obedience thing that was thrown into it. You need to obey, you need to obey, you need to obey. In other words, control. That's how I took it. I felt controlled. I could weigh out, I could go, I can see why this would be a good thing for me, but it's like my brain was taken, right? It wasn't mine anymore. There's a lot of that going on right now with our kids. They're like, no, I have a mind. I have a mind, and I have researched, and I've looked, and I've thought. I know there's a lot of false stuff out there on the internet. I know. But I also have formed an opinion. And most of the time, my children's opinions are different than mine. And I have not done the research the way they have. I'm not saying they're completely have all of the truth, but I think it's important to weigh in perspective. So my husband and I have very, very, very different perspectives on things. And let me tell you, that is the source of conflict for us. Why? Because we were told that there's an authority figure who has the perspective, the one that you need, the way of life, the way of doing things. And the way my parents did things and the way my husband's parents did things are very different. And yet we're both locked in to what we have discovered is right, wrong, good, or bad for us. So, I'll tell you what happens. I have a perspective. My husband has a perspective. He shares his perspective with me. And in that perspective, maybe he's irritated because this is what he views, and so his interpretation of the situation is this, and therefore he's irritated. Now, my perception about that, I might even have a little bit more data, is very different. I do not see it the way that he sees it, and so I share it. Well, this is what I see. Immediately, he feels, guess, challenged. He feels like he's been made wrong. Why? Because adults made children wrong for having a different perspective than them when they were young. So immediately he feels wrong. This flips the other way too, right? He'll have a perspective, he'll be sharing it, he's trying to help me out, and I'm like, nope, that's not how it goes. And I feel like I'm being made wrong. Here's the reality. We're just sharing the way we view things. When I share with him, I'm just given information. His feeling wronged, or like I'm telling him he's wrong, or attacked or shut down, is valid. That is what he feels. That's the thing we're going to learn today. It is what he feels. He's not wrong for feeling that. Why? Because that is how we were raised. When somebody is having a hard time and you have a different perspective, share your perspective, because that will change their mind and therefore they will be happy. It feels loving. And yet the trigger is you're wrong and I am authority over you and you need to accept my perspective. What does that do? It causes all sorts of issues for us. I feel attacked, I feel unheard, I feel unseen, I shut down. He feels attacked, he feels challenged, he feels wronged, like he's wrong. And I had to really sit in, what is causing that? Because as I'm explaining my perspective, in my heart, I am not actually saying you're wrong. But he's interpreting it as being wrong. In his heart, I don't know. I don't know if when he tells me something, he's telling me I'm wrong and I need to change. And therefore, when I share my perspective, he thinks that I'm telling him he's wrong. I don't know. Why? Because I'm not in his brain. I don't know. I want to share this, though. Your perspective is your truth. Okay, I want you to really grab onto this. No one ever, ever, ever has to acknowledge that for it to still be true. That is what you see. That is how you see it. That is what you feel about it. there's no challenge that can change that. That is what you see. That is what you feel. That is what you think. So gaslighting, let's go there for a minute. Gaslighters, including myself, because I was raised by a narcissist who gaslit, so that is what I did. Not with malicious intent to control, but telling somebody that their perspective is wrong, that what they're feeling they shouldn't feel, is gaslighting. And I'm a gaslighter. Till now, I'm working it out, trying to figure this out. Changing perspective and telling somebody that that's not how they should think is gaslighting. So how do we do this when your perspective is so different than someone else's? My suggestion is to take a deep breath first, disengage. Okay, we talked just about honoring. Honoring is when we have the ability to just kind of take that breath and we hold our tongue. And we emotionally disengage for just a second from our own stuff so that we can see what's in front of us, okay? Now we're gonna get to validating. You've gotta hear what they are experiencing. What's playing into that perspective? What are they feeling and how did they come to that feeling? It's really important, right? Okay. They may need some more data. You may have some information that they don't have, and their perspective may be formed based on that. Don't correct it first. It's one of the hardest things in my world. Why? Because I'm a truth seeker. If I have understanding, my world is safe, so I'm always seeking understanding, and when there's something that is skewed or I am misunderstood, I feel very unsafe. And so, I bulldoze in. And I give all the perspective, all the data that they're missing so they can change their mind and change their perspective. I have just become aware of how invalidating that is. Guess what? When you're invalidated, you do not feel seen. You do not feel heard. And so what you do is you lock in and say, but I'm right. I'm not going to listen to you because you don't even understand where I'm at right now. Lock in. And then end of story, conflict happens. We have different values. We have different ways of seeing the world, and we're both hurt and stinging. Whether it's my husband, whether it's my kids, whether it's somebody else that I talk to, that is what happens. So, taking the deep breath and being able to see and speak back to them. So, in your perspective, the way you were raised, the things that you understand and your experiences, you see things like this. Is that correct? So the way to help somebody feel heard and validated is to check in, okay? Curiosity, you'll hear me say this a lot, kills judgment. You've got to get curious. Why is that what they think? Okay, not, oh my gosh, why do you think that? I mean, everybody knows that it's this way. Everybody knows. If you ever do it, everybody knows, or like, what part did you miss? You're in judgment. Judgment will shut things down. Judgment will invalidate somebody else. Now, I'm not saying that the way that they are thinking about something without having all the data is all that there is. I get that. Let me give you, for instance, I got to wrap up today. I was teaching a group of homeschoolers, and we were teaching perspectives, and we asked them to grab an issue, and they were going to write an essay based on the issue. And one of the kids, he likes his guns a lot. He hunts, he practice shoots, he's just, rough and tumble and kind of a nature kind of guy. That's the one he chose. He's also very, very black and white. So I challenged him. I challenged them all. And we said, okay, so now you are going to write from the other side's perspective. What? He had a really, really hard time with that. There is no other perspective. Second Amendment rights. I mean, we're supposed to have guns. Like there is no other, everybody else is wrong. And he was really locked into that. And I said, so you've had a gun in your hand for most of your life and you shoot. He goes, I can totally control myself. Like, I know what guns are for. And I said, okay, are you willing, this is honoring, is asking permission. Are you willing to hear another perspective? And he goes, sure, I guess. I said, okay. When I was 16 years old, I was working at taco time. And there was a group of people who came because there was a game that just got let out. So everybody came to taco time and filled up their munchies after the game. They all left. And about 10 minutes later, after the rush was over, we were still trying to clean up. We had not emptied the till. And a guy came in, pointed a gun at my head, and said, give me all the money, B. And so I did. And then he said that one too. And I had to turn my back on a man who was holding a gun at me and empty the till. And I asked, based on that experience, would my opinion about guns be different than yours? And he goes, did that happen? I go, it absolutely happened. Would my perspective about guns be different? He goes, I guess so. And I go, right from that perspective. Why? Because the only way for us to have intelligent conversation is for us to hear the other side. We cannot come to the sweet middle ground between our differences if we don't. I would have loved my parents to check in with my perspective. Hey, Anne, why are you so upset right now? I don't understand. Why are you so upset? Can you tell me why you're upset? And I could have told them, and it could have been kind of childish because I was a child and kind of ridiculous, and I may not have had full understanding of the things that they understood. And to have them go, oh, so because this is the way you see things, you feel really scared and you don't feel like you can do it. Is that right? That curiosity. Check in. Is this what you're feeling? Is that correct? And I could have said yes. And then they could have said, I understand why you feel that way, sweetheart. I understand. Can I tell you what I see in you that you might not see in yourself? Now I'm being validated for how my brain works, for what my heart is feeling, and now I'm open. Now, with that being said, my feeling of being inadequate, scared, all of that, could have absolutely triggered my parents, right? Yesterday I told a story about how there was violence in the home, and there was a great big thing that happened. I kind of lost it, and my dad came in, and I told him how afraid I was. I was 19, how afraid I was, and how it felt like, just like when I was a little girl and I used to climb up to the maple tree. I assume that triggered a guilt in him because he couldn't protect his little girl, or didn't protect his little girl when she was young, from his own son. There must have been some shame that crawled up his leg. There must have been inadequacy. There must have been hopelessness, because it was a pretty big event, and I was sitting there crying, and he'd not seen me cry like that before. All of the feelings and judgments about himself showed up, and he did not take that breath, suspend those feelings, and look at me and what I needed. Instead, he said, well, you're not a child now. And he walked out of that room totally invalidated, completely alone, with some of the biggest feelings I've ever felt. Now, I am an adult, and my kids have said things to me that have triggered massive shame, and I have shut them down. My ability to forgive him and see what happened is easier. The wounds I have from not being validated, even if I have seen his side and forgiven him for being a human, the wounds are still around, right? And it's my responsibility to do something about it. So validation is validating their perspective. It is what they are seeing. It is what they are feeling. I did see danger. I did see aggression. I was the target of that aggression that night. I could excuse my brother for his bipolar, even though we didn't know it, and just let it go, and it's fine, it's going to blow over, and don't feel what you're feeling. That is how it went down. That does not change that I felt very afraid. Validating that fear is real. You went through a lot. I'm so sorry that you had to hide up in that maple tree and that nobody was there to protect you. What do we need to do now? What can I do to help you be safe? That would have validated that it was okay for me to be that afraid of that aggression. So the challenge today is to take a look at the way you're perceiving things. So especially if you're irritated, annoyed, frustrated, you're not wrong for being irritated. You're not wrong for being annoyed. You're not wrong for being frustrated. Take a deep breath, look and see what you're thinking about the person and saying, is that the absolute truth? Is that all there is? Or is my perspective needing to have some data? If you've got a little kid, so frustrated, so angry, throwing a little tantrum, you can say, okay, so you really, really like playing and you don't want to leave. Is that right? Yes, I don't want to leave. I am so happy that you love this place so much. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to not want to leave. It's even okay to cry. Let's not hit anybody. But you just feel what you're going to feel for a minute, and then we're still leaving. So if you're upset about leaving, that's okay. It's not going to change. We're still leaving. And I understand why this is hard, because you love this place so much. Guys, can you imagine? I wish I would have known this when I was a young mom. So, validating, once again, is acknowledging the fact that what they have perceived is what they perceived. Validating the fact that what they feel is what they felt. Validating the fact that what you see is what you see. And what you feel is what you feel. And there is nothing that can change that. That part is true. Now, if somebody feels attacked because you're sharing your perspective, check in. Did you validate them? And if so, they're just being triggered from their past. They are just believing that they're wrong. And it's okay that they believe that they're wrong. And it's okay that you're not making them wrong. Just take a step back and go, this is not productive. Especially if you go back and look, I did a thing about spinning, right? That there are 4 levels of spin. If you don't know what that is, emotional spinning. If somebody is in a level 4 or 5 spin because they believe that they're attacked, they believe that they're in threat, they believe that they're wrong, shame has crawled up their leg, all of those things, there is no talking. There is no amount of talking that can help that. So, in that particular case, you just say, I love you, and I think we need to talk about this a little bit later. You can even teach the levels of spin. Go watch that video. Levels of spin. And say, I see you're a level 4. I can see that this has got you really upset, frustrated, angry. And I would love for us to actually be able to talk. So, we are going to step away from this, both of us. Go use our body, do something physical so that we can bring this back down into a place that we can have a conversation and we can look at what we're feeling and we can hear each other. So that is it today, guys. We are going to learn emotional maturity. Stick with me. Okay, stick with me. If you like this video, please share, please like it. Please tell people to come. As always, I'm going to tell you, I have a class that I am teaching that really goes through these, and you practice a skill set once a week. Each skill set, just for the week, and then we talk about it, and I mentor you through it. All right, everybody have a wonderful, beautiful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.